When times were tough and money was scarce, our grandparents didn't have refrigerators or grocery stores around the corner. During the Great Depression, every bite counted, and wasting meat simply wasn't an option. They didn't rely on gadgets or preservatives. They relied on grit, wisdom, and old-fashioned know-how. Today, we're bringing back those time-tested methods, not just to remember the past, but to prepare for the future. Let's step into that old farmhouse kitchen and rediscover 8 simple, frugal ways our grandparents preserved meat and how they still work today.
1. Salt curing. How a handful of salt saves supper. Long before there were freezers and shrink-wrapped packages at the store, salt was the lifeline that kept meat from spoiling. Back then, a good sack of salt was worth its weight in gold, and smart families knew exactly how to use it. When Grandpa brought home a fresh cut of pork or beef, the first thing he'd do was reach for the salt barrel. No measuring spoons, no fancy recipes, just a generous, even coating of pure salt rubbed into every nook and cranny of the meat. Salt worked its magic by pulling the moisture out of the meat, and where there's no moisture, there's no room for bacteria to grow. It wasn't just about preserving. Salt curing actually transformed the meat, concentrating the flavor and creating cuts that could last through an entire winter without a lick of electricity. Folks would lay the salted meat on wooden racks in the cool pantry, or hang it from the rafters of a drafty shed where the air could circulate freely. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the meat would harden, deepen in color, and take on a rich, savory taste that no freezer could ever match. And the beauty of it? Even today, you can salt cure your own meat right at home. All you need is good quality salt, no additives, a cool, dry place, and a little patience. Salt curing isn't just a lost art. It's a powerful skill to keep food on the table, no matter what life throws your way. 2. Smoking, the sweet, smoky secret from Grandpa's woodshed. If salt was the first line of defense, smoke was the old-timer's secret weapon. Out behind the house, tucked beside the woodshed, stood a small smokehouse. Nothing fancy, just wood walls, a dirt floor, and a low fire that burned slow and steady. After salting the meat, Grandpa would hang thick slabs of pork, sausages, or even fish inside, letting the warm smoke curl around them for hours, sometimes days. The smoke didn't just add that deep, savory flavor we all love. It preserved the meat by drying it out and coating it in a protective layer that kept bugs and bacteria at bay. Different families had their own secret touches. Some used hickory wood for a bold, bacon-like punch. Others used apple or cherry wood for a sweeter note. But no matter the wood, the principle stayed the same. Slow, steady, smoky heat that turned raw meat into something built to last. Back in the Depression, this wasn't just about taste, it was survival. Smoked meat didn't need ice or refrigeration. It could hang in the pantry for weeks or ride along in a lunch pail during long days in the field. Today, you don't need a full smokehouse out back to try it yourself. A small smoker, or even a DIY setup with a grill and wood chips, can turn a modest cut of meat into something flavorful, frugal, and built to last. And when the power's out or money's tight, nothing beats the comfort of pulling out a slab of your own smoked meat, knowing that just like your grandparents, you've got what it takes to feed your family no matter what. 3. Drying, turning meat into jerky the old-fashioned way. Before snacks came in shiny plastic wrappers, jerky was the go-to fuel for farmers, ranchers, and railroad workers. It was lightweight, packed with protein, and, best of all, it didn't spoil. Back in the day, drying meat was as natural as hanging laundry on the line. Grandma would slice leftover cuts thin as a ribbon, rub in salt and pepper, maybe a pinch of garlic or red pepper flakes if she had some on hand, and then string them up in a sunny, breezy spot. The wind and warmth did the rest, slowly pulling moisture from the meat until it was tough, chewy, and ready for the long haul. You could toss a few pieces in your coat pocket, keep them in the cupboard, or pack them into a tin for the next trip to town. It wasn't just food, it was freedom. You didn't have to worry about refrigeration, spoilage, or waste. These days, folks use dehydrators or oven racks to do the same job, and it works just fine. Slice it thin, season it how you like, and let it dry low and slow. No electricity needed if you've got a warm attic or a screened-in porch with a breeze. Jerky may seem like a store-bought treat now, but in hard times it was a lifeline, and it still can be. Whether you're prepping for an emergency, going on a hike, or just wanting a healthy homemade snack, dried meat proves one thing: simple is strong, and strong lasts. 4. Pressure canning, a jar full of supper, sealed for the long haul. When the harvest came in or a hog was butchered, there was no time to waste, and no room to waste either. That's when Grandma would bring out her biggest pot, line up the mason jars, and get to work canning. Pressure canning wasn't just about saving food, it was about securing the future. Chunks of beef stew, pork shoulder, or even seasoned ground meat were packed into clean jars, sealed tight, and cooked under pressure until every last bit of bacteria was gone. And once those jars cooled and sealed with that little pop, oh, what a sound. It meant one more meal was ready for a rainy day, a hard winter, or a neighbor in need. In the days of the Great Depression, that pantry full of jars was your insurance policy. No power? No problem. A shelf-stable meal waited patiently in the basement, safe and ready for when you needed it most. Fast forward to today, and this method still holds up. Modern pressure canners are safer, faster, and easier to use than ever. Yet the outcome is the same: flavorful, long-lasting meat that doesn't rely on refrigeration or chemicals. When the storms roll in or the shelves run bare, there's comfort in hearing that lid twist open and knowing supper's already made, just like Grandma used to do. 5. Rendered lard, sealing in flavor the old-fashioned way. Back when nothing went to waste, not a bone, not a scrap, even the fat had a job to do, and that job was preservation. After a hog was butchered, the fat was slowly rendered down in a heavy pot, turning into rich, golden lard. That warm lard wasn't just for frying eggs or baking biscuits. It was a secret weapon for keeping cooked meat fresh without ice or fancy storage. Grandma would pour hot lard right over tender pieces of cooked pork, sealing them in jars or crock pots. Once cooled, the fat hardened into a thick, airtight layer, locking out air, moisture, and spoilage. Underneath that lid of fat, perfectly seasoned meat, ready for supper, weeks or even months later. And when you were ready to eat, you'd just scoop off the fat, warm up the meat, and save that layered for the next meal. Nothing wasted, everything reused. Today, it's easy to forget how useful lard really is. But in times of high food prices, unstable power, or just plain wanting to live more simply, rendering and using fat the way our grandparents did is both frugal and flavorful. So the next time you roast a fatty cut, don't toss those drippings. Let them cool, save them in a jar, and you'll have your own old-school refrigerator sitting right on the pantry shelf. Because sometimes the answer to food security is as simple as a little hot fat in a jar. 6. Jar cooking, a whole meal in a jar, the wartime way. During the war and the lean years that followed, folks didn't just preserve meat, they preserved meals. One-pot wonders packed into jars, ready to be stored on a shelf for months at a time. One of the simplest and smartest methods was this: cook your meat with rice, vegetables, and spices, then seal it all in a jar with boiling water and simmer it for hours. No chemicals, no refrigeration, just good food and old-fashioned know-how. Grandma might have used beef neck or pork shoulder, fried it up with onions and carrots, added a little salt and bay leaf, then layered it in a jar with rice. A splash of vinegar on top, a tight lid, and a long, slow simmer, usually 4 to 5 hours, would cook everything to perfection and seal in the flavor. Once cooled, the fat from the meat would rise to the top and form a natural seal, like a lid made of gold. That little jar could then sit in the cellar or pantry for up to a year, holding a full meal just waiting to be warmed up and served with fresh bread or a garden salad. In today's world, with power outages and grocery prices rising, this method still makes perfect sense. Whether you're prepping for winter, saving leftovers creatively, or building an emergency pantry, jar cooking is a time-tested way to eat well without waste. It's food security in a jar. And one more reminder that our grandparents didn't just survive, they cooked smart. 7. Sugar curing. Sweet and savory the old-time way. If salt was for survival, sugar was for comfort. Back in the days when bacon was cured at home and every slice mattered, families discovered that mixing sugar with salt didn't just preserve meat, it made it delicious. Sugar curing was especially loved for hams and bacon. The process was simple. Rub down the meat with a blend of salt and brown sugar, sometimes with a touch of pepper or cloves if you had them. Then let it rest in a cool spot for several days, turning it every so often to make sure the cure soaked in just right. The sugar helped draw out moisture just like salt did, but it also added that touch of sweetness that made breakfast feel like a treat, even when times were tough. You might not have had much, but if there was a thick slice of sugar-cured ham sizzling in the cast-iron skillet, you knew things were going to be okay. Today, this method is making a quiet comeback in backyards and kitchens all over America. You don't need a smokehouse or a cellar, just a fridge, a few days, and some patience. Make your own bacon, your own holiday ham, or even experiment with beef or poultry. And when you taste that rich, slightly sweet old-time flavor, you'll understand why this wasn't just about preserving meat. It was about preserving a little joy, too. 8. Outdoor freezing, letting winter do the work. Before deep freezers and electric coolers, folks in the northern states had a simple solution for meat preservation. They let winter handle it. When the temperature dropped below freezing, families would hang meat outdoors, from porches, rafters, or even trees, turning the cold air into a natural icebox. No cords, no bills, no humming machines. Just Mother Nature doing her part. After butchering season in late fall, large cuts of pork or beef were carefully wrapped in cloth or burlap and stored in well-ventilated sheds or outbuildings. The key wasn't just the cold, it was keeping the meat dry and protected from critters and snow. Covered properly, that meat could last all winter long, staying frozen solid in the biting cold until it was time to bring it inside and cook up a hearty meal. Even today, in rural parts of the U.S. where winter temperatures stay low, some families still use this method. It's especially useful during power outages or when freezers are full, and it's completely free. Of course, you've got to watch the weather. A sudden warm front or unexpected snowfall can ruin a good cut of meat in no time. But for those who know how to plan and wrap it right, outdoor freezing is a practical, old-school trick that still holds up. Sometimes the best freezer isn't in the kitchen, it's just outside your door, under the silent watch of a snowy sky. Our grandparents didn't waste. They didn't panic when the power went out or when the pantry looked thin. Instead, they leaned on what they knew. Simple methods, steady hands, and a deep respect for every scrap of food. Salt, smoke, sun, jars, and time. These weren't luxuries. They were lifelines. And the best part? They still are. In a world full of gadgets and short-term fixes, it's easy to forget that food doesn't have to come with an expiration date. With the right know-how, a little patience, and a willingness to learn from the past, we can build kitchens that are not only more sustainable, but more independent. So whether you're prepping for emergencies, trying to cut down on grocery bills, or just wanting to reconnect with the wisdom that fed generations before us, these old ways still work, and they might just save the day. Because when times get tough, it's not the shiny tools that get us through. It's the quiet knowledge passed down through calloused hands, smoky kitchens, and shelves lined with jars of promise. Sometimes the old ways aren't just worth remembering, they're worth reviving.